Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Film Room Podcast. This is episode 31, I think. It's probably something I should have looked up. But I'm your host, Joe Baress, along with my co-host, Joby Fawcett, back again for week 31. Joby, how we doing?
We're doing quite well, Joe. Listen, it's been a very interesting week in between podcast tapings because put a lot of mileage on the car over the course of the last week.
Yeah.
Saw some extremely entertaining and competitive basketball at the state level and was able to travel this wonderful eastern part of our state. And we're ready to go into the semifinals. And Joe, interestingly enough, the PIAA, because of a scheduling snafu with the Giant Center in Hershey, had to build in a week of off time in between the quarterfinals and the semifinals. So
That's amazing. Yeah.
in a move similar to that of the NCAA tournament, we have a week in between the Elite Eight and the Final Four.
That's right.
We're trying to kind of recharge the battery a little bit here, Joe, as we head into the final couple of weeks of the high school basketball season.
Exactly, Joby. And our teams did so well that they had to dust me off and send me from the wrestling mat to the basketball court to cover a doubleheader myself. So
yeah, and Joe, allow me to again compliment you on the outstanding transition from the mats onto the hardwood. And you saw two exciting games, one that came right down to a controversial last shot, if I may say so myself.
Right.
But we'll let you elaborate on that much later on. But yeah, we had some really entertaining basketball, and for I want to say the fourth year in a row, because obviously in the COVID year we didn't go very deep, but the players and teams have done a good job of extending our coverage into, at the very least, the semifinal round.
Absolutely. And we'll get to all of it. But first, we are joined with one of those athletes that has helped push her team into the state semifinals. It's Mountain View's Addison Kilmer joins us now. Addison, how are we doing?
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Hey, thanks for joining us. Just to let everyone know what Addison did this past week. She had 25 points, including 5 3-pointers, 10 rebounds, 2 steals, and 3 blocks, as Mountain View beat Renaissance Academy 45-33 in the PIAA second round, Class 2A second round. And then on Friday, the Mountain View junior scored a game-high 16 points in her team's 32-14 quarterfinal win over Williams Valley to advance to the semifinals. Addison, I just want to start off. I mean, it really seems like you guys had the kind of the way that every team wants in the season. You guys are kind of peaking at the right time. Talk about how well this tournament has gone for your team. How have you guys kind of been able to click at the right time and turn it on?
I honestly think defense has been one of the things to help us get as far as we have so far, and then our defense just ultimately led to our offense.
So Addison, as Joe pointed out, you and the Mountain View Lady Eagles are into the semifinals, and this is the third straight season where your team has advanced this far. Now, the first 2 years were in Class 1A, and this year you're up in Class 2A. How has this experience been different for you and your teammates as compared to the last 2 seasons?
I mean, it honestly kind of feels the same to me. Like, the expectation was still the same. Just go and try to win every game that you can play.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, it's funny. You guys went up a classification and you're still winning. So it's, and you spoke about the defense. Like, obviously if I look here, find the right tab here. I mean, you just only allowed 14 points, 33 points in the game before that, 32 points, 17 points. I mean, what has the key to your defense been? How have you kind of come together?
I honestly think our communication and our team chemistry has been a big part of that. Like, I've been playing with these girls for 3 years now, most of them. So definitely chemistry and communication.
Addison, so this year in the regular season, you had some very competitive games against your rival in Lackawanna Division III play, Elk Lake. and twice Elk Lake beat you in the regular season, and then you and your teammates were able to win the District 2 Class 2A championship with a great defensive effort against Elk Lake. How has that rivalry and that competitiveness against Elk Lake helped prepare you for this state playoff run?
I think they were just such like competitive team with us. It just showed us like, yeah, we can get beat twice, but like the third time we beat them. So it kind of gave us some confidence in like our ability to beat hard teams.
Yeah. So Addison, you kind of have, there's a few, siblings who get to play together, but you get to play along your sister, Riley. What is it like, especially from the great success that your team has had over these past few years? What's it been like, having your sister alongside you?
I mean, it's been pretty great for the most part. Obviously, we're sisters. We don't get along all the time, but for the most part, it's pretty great.
Yeah, and you two have an interesting dynamic, Addison, because you're 6'1" and you play inside a lot, but you've also developed a little bit of an outside shot. And Riley's a really outstanding defensive player who can distribute the basketball, but also can shoot the ball real well outside. How does that dynamic work for the two of you that your games are a little bit different?
I mean, I think it helps us not be so like competitive with each other so that we kind of like grow to hate each other, but it just gives us like we can give each other confidence by her giving me the ball in the paint and me finding her on the shot. Like we could feed into each other's confidence.
Yeah, definitely. How did you, growing up, who showed interest in the sport first? How did you two get started in the sport?
I mean, I honestly think that we joined like biddy basketball at the same time. I think she was in fourth grade and I was in third grade. They let me in. I don't even know why, but it was just supposed to be for the fifth graders. But I went in as third grader.
Well, it certainly has paid off for you and your teammates there at Mountain View. Now, as I want to take you back to the fall because you've had such a great, successful career in both of your sports, but last year also you had great success in volleyball. Has that kind of carried over a little bit to what you guys have enjoyed here during the basketball season?
Yeah, I'd say yes. Just from like the experience of like how like high the stakes are at a game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. What's kind of that transition like from volleyball to basketball? Is there anything that you have to do more to ramp up for basketball coming off a volleyball season?
I mean, I'd just say running because volleyball you don't really run a lot.
It's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Now, Addison, I'm going to brag on you a little bit here too because you've had a great freshman year and a great sophomore season where you were the Pennsylvania Class 1A Player of the Year. And that, while that's an outstanding title and a great accomplishment, that also comes with some pressure. So during your off season, how did you kind of mentally and physically prepare yourself for a season in which you were going to take the court as the reigning Player of the Year in the state for Class 1A?
I mean, I definitely tried to get stronger. I tried to like lift and stuff in the summer. And I mean, I guess I tried not to think about it too much when I'm on the court, but also just it kind of gave me some confidence, obviously. So I try to play with some confidence, but yeah.
Yeah, and actually one of the people I saw when I read your Athlete of the Week interview with our colleague Sam Freeman that one of the athletes you admire is, one of our own, Sierra Toomey. What about obviously you both have height, what is it about her game that you admire, and what did you take away from her kind of growing up in high school basketball?
I mean, just her ability to kind of do everything. She can shoot, she can dribble, she sees the floor so well. And from what I watched of her, like she seems like a great teammate. So
Well, you certainly have been a great teammate there at Mountain View. And I want to touch on something I mentioned earlier. You are 6 feet, 1 inch tall. Okay. So you've always been pretty much expected to be dominant inside and with your shot blocking and rebounding. But I just kind of noticed that you've really worked very hard on your outside game to make you a little bit more of versatile weapon on the offensive end. Tell me about how that 3-point shot has developed. I know you had 5 in a game earlier in the playoffs. So how do you feel shooting that shot?
I mean, I feel fairly confident most days. Some days I almost like to get back into the paint, but I feel mostly confident sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's early in the week here, but obviously you have a semifinal game coming up against Berlin Brothers Valley. Do you know anything about them in your preparation so far?
Yeah, they're a pretty good team. They run the floor really well. I think they have a really good sophomore who she does everything. She finds her teammates, she shoots, she drives. So we definitely have our work cut out for us, but
Well, yeah, Addison, listen, you're in the state semifinals. I mean, yeah, this is a big challenge for you, no question about that, but you've certainly been up to that challenge so far in your career. How exciting has it been in the school? I know you've only been there today, really, but throughout the community of Mountain View, I know it's very tight up there, and it's a small class sizes and that sort of thing. So you're all pretty familiar with each other. What's the vibe in the school district that you guys are having another remarkable, memorable run in the state playoffs?
everybody's just super excited. Like we get a lot of fans, even though the games are so far away. We're really appreciative of that because everybody just shows up, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and absolutely. Addison, you're busy yourself, so I don't know how much time you're going to get to watch it, but I see that you're a fan of UConn, you're a fan of Paige Beckers. I mean, who isn't? But there's the women's NCAA tournament has been incredible, especially over the past few years. You think you're going to be able to watch any of it? Are you looking forward to it at all?
Yeah, I'm hoping I can at least watch UConn.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty exciting. I got to see UConn in person a few months ago at Women's Classic at the Barclays Center, and let me tell you, if I don't know who could. I mean, there's a lot of great teams out there, but UConn looks pretty good. Yeah. So, Joby, you got anything?
I don't. I just want to congratulate you on another great, memorable run here in the state playoffs. This is an award and honor, very well earned. You always seem to rise to the challenge in the postseason, and I want to wish you the best of luck in another state semifinal game.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Addison.
Yep.
All right. That
was that Times-Tribune Athlete of the Week, right, Joby?
Athlete of the Week, brought to you by Lehigh Valley Orthopedic Institute. Joby, this has been.
So I think it's your third one, her career. No surprise.
I was going to say, no surprise. I mean, like you said, it's funny. You get athletes on here, and when they speak, it's just like, it's like they're humble, and then like we kind of have to say like, this is the reigning Class 1A Player of the Year in the state. Now gone up to 2A, and they're doing everything they were doing in 1A.
Yeah, John. Listen, I'm not going to lie to you. She's going to receive some consideration. No, I'm not on the panel this year, but last year when I was covering the girls' beat and I nominated her, she had put together 2 incredible back-to-back seasons in Class 1A. Of course, naturally, that's the smallest classification based on enrollment. So when Mountain View, this is the first year of a 2-year cycle, so Mountain View moved up a classification because of an increase in enrollment.
Right.
There was some speculation as to how Mountain View would be able to adjust to the higher classification, and clearly the players have adjusted quite nicely. And
fine, yeah.
And Addison Kilmer is going to be a strong candidate, I would think, for Player of the Year again in the higher classification. Now, a lot will be determined here in the next 2 weeks as the state playoffs move forward. But, Joe, Mountain View has won 10 state playoff games in the last 3 seasons, with Addison Kilmer leading the way at center.
Absolutely incredible run. And, like I mentioned the stats earlier, these are the stats she's putting up all the time. It's not just the points. It's the versatility of her game. She's an incredible defensive player, incredible defensive presence, incredible rebounder, and she keeps getting better and better with 3-pointers. And in that game last week, I mean, I think she was 5 of 11. I mean, that is an excellent percentage from 3. You know, she's just an incredible all-around player. And like you said, more than deserving of of our athlete of the week. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Joe, and I'm not going to lie to you, I brought it up a little bit, and she didn't really kind of get into it too much, but she was outstanding in volleyball season this year.
Right. Yeah, that too. Exactly. So, yeah, obviously one of our premier athletes, Joby. It's there. We had a lot going on last week especially in the basketball. You know, I don't know how many games you covered. I think it was at least 3 double headers, maybe 4 that you covered. So I'll kind of let you start with things you want to touch on.
Okay, well, just quickly, Joe, what a great credit to District 2 at the start of the state playoffs. We kind of knew going in that our teams would have some success at the state level, you know, because we had some really quality teams at the top end of District 2. And, you know, look, we have what now, Joe? 2 girls teams still playing in Mountain View and Crestwood.
Yep, that's correct.
And we have the 2 boys teams still alive from the Lackawanna League, Valley View and Holy Cross. So to be at this point where we're in the Final 4 in each classification, to still have 4 teams in District 2 playing, and really we were a heartbeat away from a couple of other teams advancing as well.
Yep.
I think that really is a credit to the coaches and players within District 2. So let's start there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Joe, I had 3 double headers and a split last week.
Right.
So that's how that worked out.
Right.
And so while that is a challenge to do that, okay, it does give me the unique opportunity to see these teams compete at this very high level of competition on the state level. Okay.
Right.
Had a very interesting Friday night in the quarterfinal round where I had the chance to see Dunmore for the first time this season. Remember, Joe, I didn't cover girls basketball this year. Scotty Walsh did.
You know it.
But so I got a chance to see Sophia Toledo for the first time in her final season, which unfortunately was also her final game. And she was extremely tenacious, friend of the show. And she gave it all she had. They just ran up against, Dunmore just ran up against a very talented Loyal Sock team, which impressed me. You know, it was one of those matchups that just didn't work well for Dunmore. And Loyal Sock was quite impressive in the victory, but that takes nothing away from the effort of all the players from Dunmore, but in particular, Sophia Toledo, who did everything she could to try to, keep her team in the game and go out the way she wanted to go out, which was giving an all-out effort right up until the bitter end, and that final horn going off in the Marts Hall in Pottsville. So I thought she was very impressive in that effort.
Yep.
Then I got a chance to see Joe Valley View, which has been really one of the feel-good stories of the season. And I say that because it's been an interesting season for Valley View. It started off so great. I think the Cougars won 11 straight games to start the year. Included in that bunch was a victory over Holy Cross. Okay.
Right.
And at the time, Holy Cross was the number 1 team in the Times-Tribune high school boys basketball poll. And with that win, Valley View kind of seized that number 1 ranking, and also kind of was the team that everybody was looking at as, hey, this team could really do some damage throughout the Lackawanna Division I schedule. And then, like some teams do during the course of a long, grueling winter sports season, they hit a little bit of a lull, couldn't find the basket, always played tough defense, Joe, but really struggled to score points and suffered some tough defeats, and actually ended the regular season with what I thought was a tough loss at home. Anytime you get a chance to finish your season at home in the regular season, when you're a senior-oriented group, you kind of want to kind of kickstart the postseason with a good performance. And
Certainly.
I think Scranton was motivated similarly to end the regular season that way as well. And so Scranton came away with a pretty convincing win. But I could kind of sense after that game and talking with Coach Mike Kirpus after the game that the team needed to refocus, and he thought that loss was going to serve that purpose. We had a similar thing in the high school football season, Joe, if you remember back with Riverside, where it suffered a very tough loss to Lackawanna Trail in week 10 and then kind of built some momentum and went to the semifinals in the Class 2A football playoffs. And we had that here with Valley View, playing outstanding basketball right now, but really one of the outstanding performances you're going to see from a player who's really been an unsung hero for this program over the course of the last 3 years is Noah Vino.
Yeah.
Joe, he was terrific. 22 points. I think he only averages 9 or 10 points a game.
Yeah.
And he had a breakout offensive game when his team needed him most. They were trailing at the half by 6 and really could have been down by 9, but Aiden Smola hit a little bit further, about 30-foot three-pointer at the buzzer. And that kind of breathed some life into the Valley View offense. And the Cougars had a very inspired second half where the defense limited Shamokin to 2 points in the third quarter. And Valley View went on to a very emotional win and has now advanced to play on Friday night against the number one Class 4A team in the state, Devon Prep. And that game will be 7:30 on Friday night at Parkland High School, Joe. So we have that one on that end. And then on Saturday, I did the split 2 games, Joe. I saw Old Forge lose to Linville Hill, which was an outstanding basketball team out of District 3. And I kind of knew going into the game that Linville Hill would be a formidable opponent for Old Forge because Linville Hill knocked out Constitution in the second round of the tournament. So, this game was exciting, Joe. It was right up and down the floor. It was 2 teams really throwing haymakers at each other throughout the entire game. Old Forge's DJ Fox had a huge game. Cameron Parker played well. Everybody really contributed. Cam Krishnowski had a big game, Ryan DeMarco and Logan Fanning, but it was just a little bit too much strength inside for Linville Hill, and they ended Old Forge's season, which was a very outstanding season, by the way, Joe, 21-6, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
With the 6 losses being 2 to Riverside, 2 to Holy Cross, 1 to Valley View, and 1 to Linville Hill. That's not a bad resume when you look back on it as Old Forge. And obviously it was a disappointing game when your season ends like that. But I think when the players from Old Forge get a chance to look back and reflect on what they were able to accomplish, I think that they can be really proud of that outstanding season that they were able to put together. And then I finished it off with Holy Cross, Joe. And it just seems like Holy Cross, one, has been extremely motivated and inspired since losing to Riverside in the District 2 Class 3A final.
Yep.
Now, they have certainly benefited by the return of C.J. Thompson, who missed that championship game with an illness. But they've also been able to kind of live on the edge and still come away with the wins, Joe. You know, that doesn't always work out in the state playoffs when you're kind of hovering around that possibility of losing. Had an overtime game with Troy in the first round and a really tough game with Audenried Charter in the second round. And then this game against Lancaster Mennonite, Joe, I just thought Holy Cross looked the part, you know, really sped the game up or up and down the floor with C.J. Thompson and Adam Bedurka pushing the ball. Michael Hughes using his outstanding speed to get to the rim. And look, Joe, Matt Lyons, congratulations to him. He reached his 1,000-point milestone, which is extremely outstanding for him because he didn't play much as a sophomore. So he's really done most of that production here in the last 2 seasons. He has elevated his gameplay for the second straight year in the state playoffs. And I think he's really going to be the key factor when Holy Cross has to play against West Catholic here on Saturday at 2:30 at Parkland High School. We know that West Catholic is a very good team because in order to get to this game, the Burrs handed Riverside only its third loss of the season. Now, Joe, I can't comment much on what happened in the game because I wasn't there. I was on Route 22 from Whitehall on my way to Liberty High School for that game between Holy Cross and Lancaster Mennonite. But by all accounts, West Catholic is an extremely gifted team, an extremely talented team, plays above the rim a little bit, and plays really that intense Philadelphia area defense. So I think this is going to be a really good matchup here in the Final Four. And what a story too, Joe, for Holy Cross. Much like Mountain View, we all remember that Holy Cross went to the state final last year in Class 2A, like Mountain View did in Class 1A.
Yep.
Had to bump up a classification this year because of the success formula and having a couple of transfers. And Holy Cross, here it is, still battling in the semifinal with a chance to go to the championship game for a second straight year.
Absolutely. And, the thing that now, Joby, that was really impressive. You mentioned pretty much everything I had written down to mention.
So you have to remember, I was at these games.
Exactly. So. I was extremely impressed. But against Lancaster Mennonite, I mean, Holy Cross, they're five starters at double figures. I mean, that's
Joe. That kind of balance is, I think, is going to give any team a hard time, including West Catholic. Now, I know that West Catholic was able to kind of slow down Riverside a little bit. I want to say that was the lowest offensive output for Riverside since its loss to Holy Cross in December.
Right.
So that's a pretty good defense if you're able to do that, because Riverside, which is a little bit different than Holy Cross in a sense that Riverside has 4 guys who can score in double figures on any given night and really relies heavily on Richie Kostoff to do the dirty work. I think Holy Cross has that 5th option.
Yeah.
That makes it a little bit more challenging for a defense to try to slow down. And look, Joe, you know yourself, you played at the state level. What it really comes down to is your scorers have to be able to put the ball in the basket.
Right.
And you have to be able to do it in a variety of ways. One, you have to establish some sort of a game inside. And then when the defense forces you to, you have to kick it out, and your shooters, those mid-range jumpers and the three-pointers have to go in. And if they do, Holy Cross is an extremely, balanced attack that can really create problems for you.
Right, absolutely. And great season by Riverside. We saw, a Nico Antonacci who, we got another 3 years of him. So, and he had an outstanding freshman season. But yeah, I mean, Holy Cross, as we've said all year, the balance. So we'll see how they play against West Catholic, but it should be a very interesting semifinals for everyone that we have there. Joby, if I may speak on the 2 teams that I was able to cover.
Well, Joe, the reason I held off on any comments on those, because you did get a chance to see those 2 teams play, and then I believe Scranton Prep went on and lost the following game, but
yep.
You were able to see them in action. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's Scranton Prep, nothing that, we hadn't said, but I finally got to see it for myself. I mean, Scranton Prep, what a great team. We discussed, obviously, Jenna Hillebrand, friend of the show, Maya Jenkins, Claire McGrath, Bella Denham, like there's so much there. The one person that another freshman that we're going to get to see, Chloe Mamera, had a great tournament for herself, even in the loss in the Elite 8 to Newman Goretti. She had a nice game. She's an excellent player inside, Joby, and she could also knock down a jump shot. She's got a nice touch around the rim. She gets rebounds. I mean, she just, it's going to be exciting to see, her develop as well in the sport. But my God, what a team Scranton Prep, brought into that tournament. It was funny because, they admittedly started slow. I mean, they were only up by 2 after the first quarter. The other team banked in a couple threes to kind of keep them in the first quarter. But once Scranton Prep got going, there was no stopping them. I mean, Dennebaum had about 13 rebounds in the game. That was huge. Mamera, again, like I said, excellent game. And then, Maya Jenkins got going in the third quarter, and it was, if she wasn't hitting a three, she was finding someone wide open with some great passes. Excellent game by her. And before you know it, that's a 30-point game. I think Prep hit about 6 threes in the third quarter, and it was off to the races. So unfortunately, they did lose to Newman Goretti, obviously a state power year in and year out, but, great run by Scranton Prep. I'm glad I got to see them play. Glad I got to see them beat Allentown Central Catholic in that round of 16. Just great team, like we've been saying all year, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, listen, Scranton Prep went to the championship game last year in Class 4A, brought back all the key players. And as you mentioned, Chloe Mamera kind of fills in there as a player who we're going to watch on the rise. The other starters, of course, were seniors for Scranton Prep. But what a great legacy this group has left on girls basketball. I really wish I had an opportunity to see them play once this year. But as you know, our schedules are a little bit weird during the course of a high school basketball season because I enjoyed covering them last year. Look, sometimes you run into a team that is equally motivated. We talk about this all the time. And you're in the state playoffs, which means the talent levels certainly even out a little bit. Okay?
Right.
and so there's always that chance. That's why we play the game. So that's why we take score.
Right.
And, yes, it was a disappointing loss for the Classics, but they have nothing to hang their heads about because they have just been a dominant force in girls basketball for the last 2 seasons, and certainly congratulations to all of them and all they were able to accomplish. And I think there's going to be a real rush of postseason awards as well for these players and for all that they've done. And I know, Joe, without giving too much away, I think we're going to try to start, at the very least, announcing some of these postseason awards. So we'll see how it plays out here for Scranton. But again, congratulations to them.
Yeah, first of all, you said it, legacy. I mean, what a legacy by these Scranton Prep girls. And to touch on what you said, some of our postseason awards, bear with us. We will be like we've been working. Joby's gathering all-stars.
It's a process, Joe.
It's a process, and you've done a great job collecting everything. And we actually will have it. We are recording this Monday. We will have Tuesday's Division I coaches, all-stars, and defensive players of the year.
So please just bear with us, Joe.
Yeah, right. We're gonna keep rolling them out when we have the space and everything. And I've got to get to my wrestling all-stars. It's a process getting together the ballots and everything. So I'll be getting those out. And like we keep saying, bear with us. We're trying to finish up a winter sports season, and spring sports is already underway.
Yeah, we will. Incredible. Now, Joe, I didn't want to sidetrack you too much because we do want to talk about Scranton.
Yeah.
That was a game you also covered in person and saw what a thriller.
Joby, I mean, what a game. These were 2 great teams going at it in Scranton and Parkland. And, I've been reading about, the stories, your stories about Scranton and the way that they, came together at the end of the season, rallied from deficits. They were never scared. They never panicked. And then I got to see it, Joby. I got to see it for myself, and they were everything that I've heard about them. Now they do end up losing the game, and I'll get to how they lost. But it's just so impressive. Each player, just had their moment. Tony Battaglia, friend of the show, he had he had 7 points in a matter of minutes to get Scranton back in the game, give them the lead actually in the third quarter, capped by a 3-pointer to quite a roar from the crowd. The both of them, Scranton and Parkland, did travel very well, so it was very, it was very lively in Stroudsburg High School. Geez, I had to think of where the game was, but he has a run where not only he scores 7 points, but he hits a cutting Pedro Lugo for a dunk in that stretch to give them a 1-point lead. Then they go down again, and it's 12 points in the fourth quarter. That's a tough lead to come back from with no shot clock, and it's just and they did it. I mean, they come all the way, they come storming back, and I've got to mention DeAndre Dickey for Scranton. I believe he is a junior. He's an underclassman. I know that. But DeAndre Dickey, Tony Battaglia fouls out. DeAndre Dickey comes in off the bench and he had a 3 in the first half to get the Scranton offense moving, and has just an absolutely incredible sequence, Joby, where he gets a steal, gets fouled on the other end, knocks down the free throws. Parkland goes to inbound the ball. He steals it, scores, and all of a sudden the score is it's a tie game in a matter of, and it was all him. He did it by himself. What Coach Tony Battaglia told me after the game, and I heard it standing outside the locker room. The team actually gave him a round of applause after the game for his effort. He had a great effort, and it comes down to it. Scranton ends up taking a 2-point lead, I believe, on a couple Jonathan Levine free throws, and what happens is, Parkland's able to tie it, and they have the ball going for the win, and the Scranton plays strong defense. I believe again Pedro Lugo is able to get his hand on a pass, and as Jonathan Levine is closing in on it, he collides with Blake Nassery from Parkland, who took quite a few steps to get to the basket.
Yeah.
And hit a layup at the buzzer. Brutal way to lose. I don't know how much we should get into it, but I mean, in that situation, Joby, we know the game. We know like when fouls get called or things get called. I feel like the officiating kind of changes when it's the last play of the game. But in my opinion, Jonathan Levine gets fouled by Nassery, and then Nassery takes at least 3 steps to get a buzzer beating layup. It's a brutal way to lose. Things happen. We're human, but it's just, Joby, it's a brutal way to go, especially, getting, seeing this team that always came back, always, battled back. They come back from a 12-point deficit and actually take the lead in the fourth quarter. And to lose like that is painful, but I do want to say credit to that Scranton team. I mean, they were definitely something special, and just a disappointing way to go out.
So, Joe, as you know, because you've been following it quite closely, the officiating at all levels has been under extreme scrutiny and fire.
Yes.
In all sports.
Right.
Okay.
Right. At all levels.
I am not a sports writer who piles on. I try to, at the very least, understand the extremely challenging job of officiating any sport, let alone at the high school level. And believe me, when I tell you, in the current state that we're in the state, we had that big brawl that eliminated 2 teams from the state tournament. Okay, when the PIAA has to, level those kinds of penalties to try to curtail some of this bad behavior that we're seeing statewide toward officials.
Yep.
I want to be very, very careful in saying this. I think in that situation, I may have mentioned this to you, that what happens is you tend to, as an official, whether you want to or not, you tend to want this to play out.
Right.
And let the game be won on the court by the players rather than making what would be, certainly in the final seconds, a game-changing whistle.
Yeah. Yep.
And what happens is sometimes you kind of miss one and hope that the other doesn't happen.
Right.
Now, you correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. Scranton being in the bonus in that situation.
Yes.
So Levine's going to probably go to the free throw line to decide if that's called properly. Okay.
Right.
Then I think if you're officiating the game, you probably hope that Nasseri misses that desperation shot.
Right.
But by the time it goes down, now you're in a bad spot as an official. Now, again, these things happen quickly.
Yes.
They're happening at a very intense part of the game. So, again, while appreciating the extremely challenging job it is to officiate at any level of sports, I'm kind of sad that Scranton lost like that, because it just seems like historically that seems to be the fate of this Scranton boys basketball team under the guidance of Coach Tony Battaglia. I thought, he just, for whatever reason, seems to have the bad luck when it comes to those types of outcomes. That being said, again, great season by Scranton.
Right.
It was a tremendous effort. A lot can be said for a team that continually shows the character and the grit and the determination to come back. But sometimes, Joe, when you're, as I mentioned with Holy Cross, you're living on the edge, sometimes that is a cause for that little bit of bad luck you tend to have at the end of the season, or at the end of a game. So, well, I don't want to totally blame the officials. I saw the video and I thought the same thing that you thought. My initial reaction was, well, first they missed the foul on the loose ball. And secondly, I don't know if it was 3 steps. It might have been 3. It certainly looked like a walk. It certainly looked like he definitely didn't get the shot off before he walked.
You're right. Right. And
that being said, it was a fantastic game, a crazy outcome for you, Joe, to have to deal with in only your second live action of the season.
Exactly. Joby, let me get to that, because I do want to compliment you. The one thing that I want to say is that it's the point I meant to get to, and it's the point that you spoke to. You understand things getting let go, but I just feel like you have to call one of those things. You can't get away with the foul and the walk. And I just think you have to call one of those things.
Well, Parkland got the trifecta.
Exactly. So, and again, it's a thankless job. I wouldn't want to do it, but
Joe, believe me, I have been, as you know, I've seen a lot of state games this year.
Yep.
There is no way I don't have the makeup mentally to have the calm demeanor that you need to have when confronted by, just epitaphs and everything else being launched at you from the bleachers. And I realized that the great commercial, if you can remember back, Joe, when the referee is getting harassed on the sideline by the football coaches and he's just totally ignoring it. And then, of course, they flash back to him ignoring his wife in a similar scenario. But all that being said, I don't have that kind of a makeup. I just, I couldn't do it. And in this day and age of modern technology, Joe, where there's a lot of cameras.
Yep. Everybody could see it.
I think, and look, because you as a fan, you are watching games now professionally and collegiately where they can go to a monitor and we have replay officials and that sort of thing. I think that fans at a high school event seem to think that technology is applied to high school when it's not. And look, it's not going to be anytime soon either. Right. So get those notions out of your head. And it's just unfortunate that we're in this situation. And that's why we have such a reduced number of people volunteering or at the very least signing up and going into officiating.
Exactly.
And we're trying to have these seminars on a regular basis to try to get some young people involved in officiating. But when it becomes such a personal attack on a human being, we all have a little bit of some sensitivities to things being launched at us. And right. Joe, I've even experienced, and maybe, obviously those were the first two games you were at this year, but geez, the teams in the lead are just abusive, and it's just very difficult. And I can certainly appreciate the passion in which you follow your high school athletic teams, and I want to encourage that. But I also want you to remember, these are human beings.
Exactly.
Out loud. They're just trying to establish some semblance of organization and enforcement of some laws and some rules and some, so we can have what at least resembles something better than a pickup game at the local YMCA.
Joby, that reminds me of something that happened at that Scranton Parkland game. Heard from the Parkland stands behind us. It was on the same play. Someone said, "Come on, call that foul." And then after they called the foul, someone also from the Parkland stand said, "There's too many fouls in this game."
Yeah, it is as thankless as
it's like there was no one was happy. It was like, do you want him to call the foul or do you? Oh my God, it was
Joe, I always enjoy this one, and this is one you can certainly appreciate being a former basketball standout yourself. Anytime somebody gets a rebound over the back,
yeah,
it doesn't matter who collected the rebound.
Exactly.
If it's not your guy, the other guy was over the back.
It's right. And, one thing I wanted to mention, and you see this in games all the time, this, and I'm not sure, I wasn't like doing a player breakdown of Parkland before I went down to watch this game, but Jude Roosh, I think his last name is pronounced. He hits 4-3. He goes 4 for 4 from 3. And, and I think 2 were right before the buzzer. They executed plays very well before the end of, quarters. And, you'll see this in all state playoff games. Someone steps up and does things at timely moments, and it kills you. But like I said, credit to Scranton for constantly coming back. And like I wanted to say now, so you covering basketball games all year, and many 3 doubleheaders and pretty much a 4th doubleheader, Joby. How to let everyone know how it goes is basically the game starts and you're taking video with one hand, taking stats with another hand, and there'll be a possession where I was telling you shot, miss, rebound, shot, miss, rebound, block, and you have to try to get all those stats down before the other play is going on again while you're taking video. And boy, those timeouts and that halftime get much shorter when you're covering those games, Joe.
They sure do, though.
And all of a sudden, I go to interview Bob Avila and Chloe Mamera after the game. I get those interviews done, and the next game's starting. And you're running back to, I'm running back to the table to start taking, and then it's a lot. I'm not trying to the people listening. I'm not trying to say, "Oh, woe is us." That's not.
Well, no, but Joe, let's finish out what the protocol is for us, okay? Because people always ask me what it entails, because to cover a high school event like a basketball doubleheader, okay? And you've kind of mentioned how quickly the turnaround is between the two games, and certainly in between plays, and that, yeah. So the actual game coverage is extremely intense and made a little bit more challenging now with our doing the videos and sending the highlight clips the best we can to Twitter or X. I'm sorry, Joe. text, trying to keep the followers there up to date on what's going on. Okay. So you have the two games back to back. You have a very small window in between the two games to do some post game interviews and interaction, and then get back to your seat and do the game. And what a lot of people fail to understand at that point, once the second game is completed and interviews are done, now you had a little bit different scenario than I did, but for the most part, the pattern is, or the formula is, we find a location, whether it be, a shopping center or whatever, or even if it's just the school you're at, the location, you kind of find a spot where there's one of those big tower lights. And so you have lights down on your car, and we work from our car.
Right.
From the location, because we want to get a quick turnaround to get this information online as quickly as possible, and for the fans and people who are following. So you'll have to take some pretty meticulous notes, because by the time you get into your car and you get yourself all set up with your computer, get hooked up to your hotspot or Wi-Fi, whatever you're doing, you have to try to remember what happened in the games.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And then you add up your box scores and make sure everything is correct. And then you kind of write and do the best you can. You have to transcribe your tape, and then you have to upload your video highlights and your interviews and whatnot. And the next thing you know, I was driving home the other night from Pottsville. I didn't get home until 1:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
Then you have the quick turnaround on Saturday to get back down to the Lehigh Valley for the two games. So yeah, the part that people don't see of what we do when we cover a game. Obviously, they see us at the venues and they see us at the games. Is that part?
Right.
The 2 to 2.5 hours that we put in after to provide this information, and then the 1.5 hour drive home.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
But it has been fun, and we certainly appreciate the efforts of our teams to keep us going here throughout the state playoffs and give us the wonderful opportunity to do that. But yeah, it is a stressful time when you're sitting alone in a parking lot in your vehicle.
Exactly. Or at your local Wawa or Wendy's or
we don't
whatever.
want to give any of our locations, Joe, just in case people are
Exactly. Now, as you mentioned, I had the benefit of my father wanted to take in some high school basketball, so drove me down and back to Stroudsburg, so I got to work in the car and get back home at a respectable hour. So
now, Joe, does your dad function as an Uber at that point? Does he charge you, or does he click the meter while he's driving?
Charge. He even got me some waters during the game, Joby.
That was nice.
Exactly. So I was very lucky at my location for sure. So,
Joe, I had the benefit at Pottsville. There is a very historic landmark in the city of Pottsville, which I used to frequent quite often, and we won't get into that too much here on the podcast. But that being said, I had a dear friend of mine, my roommate from college, and who I lived with for 4 years. He visited me and was my sidekick and helped me out covering the games at the location in Pottsville. And he volunteered to get me a couple of waters. And so I was lucky in that regard. And I think I'm going to be able to have the benefit again this week, because I'll be in the Lehigh Valley with my other roommate from college. These were college football players of mine, fraternity brothers of mine, Jim Birch and Tim Monsman. Tim Monsman, of course, is the head football coach at Parkland. So I'll be able to spend some time with him. So that's one of the real keys and benefits of all this great success that our teams have had here in the state playoffs. I get to see a lot of my old friends, and that's fun too.
Right. Absolutely, Joby. Absolutely. So
I didn't have a driver though, Joe.
That's unfortunate, but I'll see what Rocco's doing this week. I'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you.
So Joby, we've somehow reached almost 57 minutes here.
We have a lot to talk about here today, Joe, in episode 31.
Exactly. It's,
and we're going to have quite a bit to talk about next week as well. We'll see if we have any teams advance to the final, which would take place the following weekend. Remember, now we go Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Right.
In Hershey the following week for the state basketball tournaments to wrap up.
Exactly. And, I just want to touch on one thing. Obviously, spring sports is underway. Nick Bradley from Abington Heights had a very good start to the baseball season. Obviously, he's committed to like Auburn, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay. So, I mean, he hit for the cycle, had 3 RBIs, and then threw 6 1/3 shutout innings to boot, allowing 1 hit, striking out 6 in a win over Wilkes-Barre, and added an RBI single for the only run of the game and a victory over Freedom. So yeah, we're
clearly that late season knee injury is not affecting his baseball season.
Right. So good to see him back out there, but yeah, everything else we'll have you covered again this week. Obviously, we'll be at all the states semifinal games.
Well, I will be, Joe.
That's true. Yeah, I won't be. I won't be. So, but yeah, listen, follow along the Times-Tribune.com/sports.
We encourage you to go on the website after the game for full coverage, because as we mentioned, we are putting in the time and effort immediately after the games to get that information out there posted for you, so you don't have to wait for the next morning.
Exactly. And Joby will have highlights as well from his games.
If my phone continues to function, Joe.
That's true.
The memory is not so good right now.
It's been through a lot. A lot. So Joby always shares everything from all of us high school wise on his Facebook page, Joby Fawcett, the Times-Tribune. Follow our Facebook page, the Times-Tribune Sports, and on Instagram as well, the Times-Tribune Sports. And yeah, we'll have another week. We'll see you back here on this podcast next week. Hopefully next Monday. We've had a nice streak going for ourselves. Thank you to Addison Kilmer again for joining us, and good luck to everyone this weekend. We hope to see some state finalists, but some tough matchups, obviously, for some teams. All of them. It's the state semis, Joby.
That's right, Joe.
They're pretty good teams.
That's right. That's how they reach that level, Joe.
Exactly. So again, Joby, thank you for taking the time.